Did you know that you have the ability to choose how long your application takes in council and how much it costs? Right now, you're probably sitting there going, excuse me, since when? Well, stick around. In this video, I'm going to take you behind the scenes. We're going to explore the 3 options that you have available so that next time you can choose the best outcome for your project. So today we're going to start off with a bit of a history lesson, history of Brisbane and town planning. So let's start. Let's go back to mid-2000s, back when I used to work for Brisbane City Council. Back at this point in time, there was only one process. Applications, whether it be a small house extension, a carport, a gatehouse, or a massive development like a shopping centre or a high-rise, all went through the exact same process. They were all lumped together in the same line, the same queue. That obviously meant massive delays. I remember 3 months was the standard minimum time frame for an application to go through council. 6 to 12 months was pretty standard. 12 plus months wasn't unheard of. Unfortunately, having a single process and everyone in that same single line just meant that there was a massive backlog. Things took forever. Now, the state government realised that. They realised that that was crippling development across Brisbane. So, they put incentives out there, financial incentives, to try and get the councils in South East Queensland to introduce a fast-track process. Brisbane City Council, I'm not sure whether they were the first or whether they were one of the first to just run with it, but they basically took it and ran. So they introduced what we call RiskSMART. So back before here, like I said, we had one process. Then we introduced RiskSMART. RiskSMART, excuse the messy writing. Now, we were talking here originally, 3 months was the absolute minimum, but it wasn't unheard of to have 12 plus months as a standard turnaround time on an application. Sounds crazy, I know. RiskSMART, basically what they did is they turned it around in 1 to 2 weeks. Now you will hear people say 5 business days. That 5 business days doesn't actually start ticking until council has receipted the money, so until the application is properly made. Before it gets to that point, it's got to be lodged, it's got to be processed by council, they've got to issue their fee quote, you've got to pay the fee quote, and the money has to land in their bank account. So then that's the point where the 5 business days starts ticking. So really, I like to say 1 to 2 weeks because it covers all that little bit of back and forth at the beginning there. Massive difference, as you can see here. So yeah, 3 months is a standard, now down to 1 to 2 weeks. How did they do that? Well, firstly, they basically put it out to all the town planners and said, if you're a qualified town planner, and if you can demonstrate to us that you've lodged a high volume of good quality applications in each of the categories, then we'll give you an accreditation. Off the top of my head, I think there was about 7 different categories back in the beginning. Me personally, I was qualified in about 5 of them. The ones that I didn't have, or still don't have, are pontoons and schools. Seriously, who lodges a pontoon application? Come on. So basically, they put it out there and said, hey, look, you can get accreditation, and then you, I'd call it quasi self-certify the jobs. So what we do is essentially, we assess the application on behalf of council, in theory, prepare a draft conditions package, and present the information to council for checking. In theory, I keep saying in theory because this is how it's supposed to work, they cast their eye over it just to double check and then issue the approval. So we as accredited consultants are essentially the ones doing the assessment on behalf of council. The reality is council has to take on a bit of risk there, so they end up doing the assessment themselves. But by involving us as accredited consultants, by stepping up the requirements in terms of what we actually need to provide to council, and by creating a dedicated team of town planners and specialists, by specialists I mean engineers, architects, ecologists, etc., that can focus solely on those applications, it drastically impacted on the timeframes. So now we fast forward probably 2010. Brisbane City Council realised that was a huge success. So what they decided to do was introduce a 3rd process. At this point, we come along to AssessSMART. So what they, like I said, essentially did is, okay, we've got one extreme, the other extreme, let's fill in the middle. So where this now covered applications that were really simple, tick a box type things, this covered the more complex applications They brought stuff from here down to here. So what they essentially said is this original process should now only be resolved or reserved for complex applications. Applications that require a lot of assessment by council. These applications should be ones that fall just outside the criteria for RiskSMART. So they require a little bit of assessment by council, but nothing too crazy. These ones are still the ones that are straightforward. In theory, council shouldn't have to assess those ones. It should be a no-brainer. Now, we fast forward again, 2015. These are approximate sort of dates. At this point, council goes, okay, we're still having so much success here. This is going so well. How do we capitalise on it? So they created what I call the grey area. Where we are now is essentially council is saying we're open to opening up the criterion for RiskSMART. So where previously you could only lodge applications through there that ticked every single box, RiskSMART now says, well, give us your best argument. So if we can go to RiskSMART and say, hey, look, no, it doesn't meet this requirement, or it doesn't meet that requirement, but here's why we think it's an absolute no-brainer in terms of complying with the performance solution. And if we can show them that there's no risk in terms of neighbours' complaints, which we usually do via the submission of neighbours' letters, then they usually come back to us and go, yeah, okay, why not? Throw it in with us. So we now end up with these sort of technically 3 options, but a bit of a grey area in between. So now we come to present day, where we are at the moment. Where we sit is if your proposal ticks every single box, it's a straightforward, so it's a house extension, you're using traditional materials, traditional pitched roofs, all of that sort of stuff, it goes through RiskSMART. If you're seeking to do something that pushes the boundaries a little bit too far, but it's a smaller type of application, so you want to go a 3-storey house, something along those lines, it goes to AssessSMART. If you want to do a massive proposal or a massive project, it goes the normal team process. If your design fits somewhere in between those, we go to RiskSMART, we put our best argument forward and try and get them to agree to accept it via the RiskSMART process. Typically, that I hate using the term pre-approval, but it's essentially what it is. That pre-approval process normally takes a few days to get the answer out of council. If they're busy, it can take up to a week. But obviously, with timeframes here, I should have said this back a little while ago, AssessSMART, you're typically looking at maybe 1 to 2 months. So when you're looking at, let's just actually write that down there. When you're looking at 1 to 2 weeks, first 1 to 2 months, an extra 3 to 5 days to ask council or ask RiskSMART, it's not really an issue. So this is where we tend to operate. So we come to options. When someone comes to us with a proposal, we typically like to go back to them with options. First option, can we get them out of a DA? Excuse me. So we basically say, okay, if you make these changes, so you change A, B, and C, you can bypass town planning altogether. You can go straight to the private certifier. Saves you money, saves you time, it's the best outcome. Option 2, if you change A and maybe B, we can qualify for RiskSMART. 1 to 2 week turnaround time. The other benefit I haven't mentioned so far is you get a 20% discount off council's fee. So you save a few $100 generally. So make those couple of changes and we can go via RiskSMART. Or option 3, keep the proposal exactly as it is and push all the boundaries through council. Basically, we go back to people, say, there are your 3 options. You can choose which pathway you want to go down. Obviously, our preference is option number 1 because it's the cheapest and quickest. More often than not, we find people settle for RiskSMART. Keeping in mind that you can pay the extra 20% council fees and spend the extra time in council, but you could end up negotiating backwards to an outcome that would have been approved here. So just because you're paying the extra money and spending the extra time doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get the outcome that you ultimately asked for. Obviously, we do still have this process back here, the normal team process. To be honest, it's extremely rare that I would suggest anyone go down that path. At the scale that we're sort of operating at, so houses, house extensions, units up to 10 units and lots up to 10 lots in a subdivision, this process just simply isn't worth it. You're wasting your time and money even trying to go down there. Keeping in mind that you're still looking at up to 6 months for this process, even today. So there you have it, a bit of a history. Just to recap, like I said, originally, going back to roughly 2005, we originally only had one process. That meant that every application went through the same channel and therefore there was massive time delays. We're looking at 12 plus months. Council then introduced the RiskSMART. under the incentives that the state government introduced. That brought the timeframes down for simple applications to 1 to 2 weeks. That program was such a huge success that they then decided to introduce a middle ground sort of process to sit between the two extremes. That brought the timeframes down for some of those more complex applications to 1 to 2 months. Now we've progressed to this point where council's trying to build out what RiskSMART can actually accept. As a result, they've created this grey area, the opportunity for us to come to them and say, this is why we think it's low risk, and therefore potentially get them to take it on. And what it ultimately means is that you have the option to choose which pathway you go down. You can come back to your town planner and just say, hey, look, time is number one consideration here. I need to have this out next week. What do I need to do to go via RiskSMART? If you turn around and say, no, the design's number one. I've spent the last 2 years coming up with this option. It's my dream house. It's what I want. I'm not prepared to budge on it. Hey, you start looking at AssessSMART. Again, yes, you can go the team, but I wouldn't recommend it. So you're really looking at AssessSMART. So it's you choosing based on time, money, and design, what your priority is, and therefore which option you go for. I think that pretty much covers everything. As always, if you've liked this video, please like, comment, or share below. If I see lots of likes, comments, and shares, I'll assume that I'm onto a winner and I'll keep making these videos. However, if I don't see a lot of love, then I'll just assume I'm boring everyone and I'll stop recording. Until next time, thanks for watching.
For all you red tape lovers out there, I have one thing to say. Well, no, actually, I've got 3. Number 1, the advice provided in these videos is general in nature. It's not site specific. You would be a silly Billy to go and make financial decisions based on this advice without first checking with the town planner. Don't be a silly Billy. Number 2, Brisbane town planning is in no way linked to Brisbane City Council. The views expressed in these videos are my own, not council's. So if you don't like them, blame me, not council. Number 3, what was my number 3? Oh yeah, the views expressed in these videos are accurate at the time of recording. If you're watching this video back 10 years from now, the views may not be so accurate. That's all. Bye.